Hey everyone, welcome back to Life Unpotted. Happy New Year, happy 2024. We are so excited to have you joining Life Unpotted for another year. It was about a year ago that we started transitioning from Wildflowers to Life Unpotted, and we've been podcasting every single day, except we took one break for the past year. And I just want to say that when you're consistent with anything, wow, growth, progress. I'm just feeling proud of ourselves for that. And I think kind of wanted to use this episode as a space to do a little life update. What have we been up to besides the podcast? What has been going on in our life? And really, it's been around 8 or so months since we both left our jobs. So a lot of reflection there. What has past year been like not working for an employer? What has it been like taking this untraditional path of making money on our own? So yeah, thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. And we're excited for this year. There's a lot of energy in the air. I really feel that way. Honestly, I feel like early December, I was in my lows and now I'm just feeling good. So hope you guys feel that way as well. And excited for today's episode.
Very excited for today's episode. There is so much energy in the air. It's a very exciting time, it feels. And the last year has led up to all of this. So, it's the new year. You want to take it easy and give you guys just a bit of a life update on what's been going on in our lives behind the scenes of everything, and a time to just do more reflection and just process and understand, because sometimes taking action, it looks like processing and just talking about the things that you're excited about and not being rigid, but feeling excited and inspired. So Sophie's right. We've been doing this weekly for a full year now. We haven't missed a single week. So that is an accomplishment. That is an exciting one. And it's cool to just see how much can happen in a year's time, when you just put your head down. And I wouldn't look back in the past year and be like, on a daily basis, that I was thinking oh, I put my head down and I worked hard. It wasn't even that. It was more of just becoming aware of what I needed to look at that was right in front of me, instead of pushing it off to the side. So I guess here we want to use this space today to tell you a little bit about what we're looking forward to implementing into our lives, into this podcast, into our community, into our personal projects in the new year. There's so much that we are excited. And I haven't even began to put it out on paper or think about it. So going to use this episode here to do that.
It's really interesting that I never knew that my career could be this. Right now I'm making money from the podcast. I'm making money from the coaching business I started back in 2023, from our Substack. We're writing. Daisy is doing a lot with podcast editing. I'll let you talk more about that. But it's so interesting how you can really monetize your passions. You can monetize anything. And I remember recently seeing a video from Gary Vee. Love Gary Vee. He could be a little hard at times, but he honestly was a big inspiration for me when I first was kind of questioning wanting to leave my job and wanting to leave. Of him just being like, if you were a Barbie fanatic and you started a podcast about Barbie, and then fast forward 5 years, all of a sudden Mattel makes this movie, they would have reached out to you and said, hey, we'll sponsor you. We'll run an ad on your podcast. And kind of just showing the point how and it kind of goes to what Alan Watts would say, and this would really got my wheels turning, where he would be like, if money was no object, what would you want to do with your life? How would you want to spend it? And he would go off to say that when you become passionate about something, when you really, really are interested in something, your people will find you, the community will grow, and therefore you'll be able to monetize it. And it's been really interesting, I think, taking a really big leap from having a high-paying salary in New York City and going to low-pay salary. And it's interesting to that was an interesting process, honestly, of being like, wow, I was used to making a lot of money per month and now I'm counting pennies. And it was humbling. It was a really, really good way to realize that I can trust myself. I can trust Daisy and I can trust myself on my own, that things will unfold, and they have been. So yeah, I think that's it's a really amazing reminder that you really can build these things, but it takes time and it takes consistency. And there are so many ways to make money. There are so many ways. And I never thought this. I was like, oh, you have to be on the corporate path. And it's you know the craziest part? And I had this realization when I was a lawyer. It's like, okay, so I'm a lawyer, right? I'm making pretty good salary. And then I'm going to get capped. Yeah, I could be partner, and then you get a share of profit of like all the partners. But still, at the end of the day, you're still capped in your earnings. And I'm already seeing, wow, exponential growth. Like our community has grown, our subscribers have grown, and your ability to profit, you're entirely in control of that. I think being in control of how much you can grow and how much you could scale and how much you can monetize is freaking an incredible feeling. And knowing that there's no one else controlling that besides you.
Well, it's interesting because I think part of the joy that comes with building something is that you don't know where it's going. And it is rooted in uncertainty, the ultimate uncertainty, which is a very humbling experience. But what comes from that when you actually do make money from doing something that you love and you're taking a chance on it and you are pinching pennies is that you feel so freaking excited when you can make any amount of money from something that you love. And you're like, for the first time, I'm like, yes, okay, car payment, paid. Venmo to you, Sophie, paid. Because this money came from doing something that feels really good in a way to be receiving it from. And that's an interesting mindset to change of, aren't all dollars equal? And in some respects, all dollars are equal. But in other respects of the way I'm talking about this is, it doesn't feel that way when you make the money on your own. It doesn't feel as equal as if you make it from doing a job that you really don't like, in the sense of the only reason why I have this dollar isn't just to get this dollar. It's from doing a labor of love of something I do love, and I'm also getting paid for it. So it makes me want to send it back out into the world a little bit more. It makes me want to just keep giving out to other people because I know it'll come back to me because I get to do something I love and it gets to come back. And I think that's a really exciting way to live because it's taking each day as it is. And yeah, it comes with its days where it's not fun and it's scary and it's unsettling. But I think that's what makes all of it the more sweeter when you do achieve something on your own that way. I think it's really cool. With all of that to be said, yeah, so right now I'm nannying and it's consistent throughout the week and it's helpful with finances. And it's something that it truly is a lovely experience. It's so different than working in the corporate world because you're forming emotional relationships, you're taking care of someone, and you're making an impact on someone's day-to-day life, which feels really good. So going into the new year, I'm really excited to start offering podcast editing, and I'm really excited to start offering podcast consultation because I just realized I'm learning so much. Like I've been doing consistent podcast editing for over a year for us, and I'm starting to realize the technicalities and how detailed you can get. And I'm just now learning all of this, like with the mic settings and all of this really fascinating stuff, honestly, that can make your life a lot easier when you are editing. So it's just making me realize, like, when you're getting started, there's a lot to learn. So it would be really cool to do some sort of like podcast consulting for people who are, just getting started and don't know, because it's something that I've gone through, I've learned, and it's something that I do on a multiple day basis during the week. And I guess you could consider that freelancing. And I think that is just a really exciting way. I'm realizing like, oh, I can make money. There's ways to make money and you can really sell services. And I am stoked to release more into the new year. And not to mention like writing and more poetry and just focusing on dialing in. I know what it is, what I want to do now, and it's just getting it done. And I think it's just, I've never had a year start like this, basically. There's so many things I'm excited to do, and that's just it.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Like, think of the workshop I hosted end of year a few weeks ago. I made like $130 from that. And it was really interesting being like, wow, it's not even about how much money I made, but it was seeing that I'm capable of making money. This is the first workshop I've ever hosted ever before. And there was about like 14 people, charged about $20 a ticket, $25 a ticket. And then JC, host of Recalibrate podcast, we split the cost. And I was like, wow, just buy a workshop. So it got us thinking, oh, maybe we could sell courses. And it's so interesting because I think a really big thing I've unlearned throughout all of this is that it's okay to charge. It's okay to charge for your services. It's okay to charge for the products. It's okay for us to, at the end of the year, we ask people for donations to our podcast. So many people have told us that they have valued from our work. And I think that was a big unlearning for me, right? Of kind of coming from the corporate world where I was not connected at all to what I was doing at all, right? I would do commercial loans, real estate, and I really did enjoy it for a large part, but that connection to the money was not there, like at all. Like it really wasn't. And there's something I think that changes when you are connected to the money because you realize it's not about greed. I'm not doing this just to get richer. I am now tapping into this like reciprocity, energy flows in, energy flows out type of cycle of realizing money is just that. So for example, when I have a coaching client come to me and we have a really valuable session, right? Like I have some people coming to me about like really big life changes they want to make or tapping into their passions, and I'm able to work with them. And I really feel like as I'm working with them, I'm sending them love. Like I'm really so zoned in. I'm so focused. And I guess I never knew that I could be so focused on something and love it. I never knew that I could be so interested in something and also love it. And it makes me think of those people who are like, you cannot make your passions your full times. And I was like, wait a minute, who the hell decided that? And that's probably because maybe they didn't try. And also, we've talked about this before, but the economy has changed. Like, I remember it was last year where I saw Forbes 30 under 30, and I saw, what's her face, like the biggest TikToker. And I remember being like, oh, wow, she outperformed like a CEO tech executive or like a CEO of an oil company. And I was like, okay. I remember sitting at my desk. I was making my salary in New York. I was like, okay, something's going on here. I'm spending so much time working as a lawyer, and I just don't think that return is there. And seeing how much exponential growth you can have, and then at the same time, love what you're doing and be so passionate about it. It's like, holy shit. And the thing is, the only way to find out about this stuff is to do it. So if the listener is somebody who maybe like, look, and I think a big caveat I want to say is that like, you don't have to leave your job to find out what you're passionate about. And for me, I stayed at my job for a really long time. Maybe the goal is for you to leave your job. Maybe the goal is you really want to stay at the job, and that is great too, but you want something on the side. Additional streams of revenue, additional streams of income are great, right? You want to be able to make money from different places. So if you're someone who wants to get into monetizing your passion, I feel like the first thing to start is, we have a friend who started doing this Amazon affiliate program where he would review Amazon products. You make a few $1,000s a month or something. So I guess my point is that like there's so many unconventional ways now that are becoming conventional, and that what was traditional in terms of working, what was prestigious, banker, lawyer, doctor, I kind of feel like we're really shifting into a world where people are thinking of, oh, I can kind of create my career. I can design my career. And it can be as simple as, I'm a podcaster, I'm a writer, I'm a poet, I freelance, right? And that's okay. So I'm excited for this year to keep exploring this more, to keep exploring the realms of monetizing my passion, and also bringing in this energy now of confidence with that of, I totally understand why I'm charging people, and I no longer feel bad about that at all, but I see it as this beautiful exchange. And it's, when did we ever create such separation between the way we spend our money and the product we're getting? Why did it become something that we're so disconnected from? And it's just kind of like reconnecting us to the way we spend the money, to the things we buy, and to the people we're buying it from.
So I think what's interesting is that we started this podcast. The majority of this podcast was done when we were still at our jobs, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We just wanted to do something that represented us. We wanted to do something that felt rejoicing, I guess. We wanted to do something that felt like it gave back to us. And when we started, I don't know about you, Sophie, but I had no idea where this was going to go. I had no clue. I was just doing it to push myself, to learn about myself, to push me beyond my own limiting beliefs. That was the origin of the podcast. So to now be where we're at, where we're going into the new year, and we're thinking of different monetization fields. for us to be at this new year point 1 year later from the rebrand and going into this new year with new streams of monetization ideas that are legitimate and I feel comfortable receiving money from is an exciting place to be, to realize I did not intend upon asking people for money when I started this podcast. I didn't even know if it would lead to that. It wasn't really the intention at all with it. It was for me. So to take something from that intention and to realize people are willing to pay for different services and things, it's an amazing feeling. It's an amazing feeling because you get to just live and do what it is that you want to do, and you can make money. You can make a living from that. You can make a living from that. And that is a new experience for me because I never liked any of the jobs that I was at. I didn't understand who I was. I didn't understand what I was doing. I kind of feel like life is just starting right now. I literally feel like this year, my life has just started, especially with the move to Austin. Everything has changed around me. And I'm like, oh, I see the future happening. And it's already started because of everything that's happened in this last year. The main thing that I'm radiating from this experience is the fact that I feel empowered, because I never thought that I could make money on my own, even if it's just a very modest amount, even if that's all it is, to make a living, to support myself, and to do it in a way that isn't what I always thought it had to be, even if it is having a few part-time jobs, even if it is doing that while I find ways to monetize what I love doing full time. And it feels so empowering. So anyone who is interested in starting a podcast or starting a community or starting anything, whether that's a craft, whether that's literally knitting, whether if that's a sport. I just met our neighbor and he started an online chess coaching business in 2020, and it's his full-time thing. Chess apparently popped off in 2020. So
wow, maybe we can have it on the podcast. That's awesome. I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, it's really cool. So it's cool to see people doing this. And I think the number one thing is that it's empowering for people to realize that they don't have to depend on someone else. I mean, in a way, yeah, I guess you're depending on your patrons, you're depending on people around you. But when you recognize it's just energy flow of like what you're doing every day is for yourself and by yourself, I mean, everyone, because we're all connected. And it's such a beautiful way to get to live, of saying, I'm going to just give all of this out on a daily basis and we'll see what comes back. And if that's in a monetary form, that's really cool.
Yeah, for sure. I'm having a lot of thoughts. One of the thoughts was, it's interesting, these limiting beliefs we have about money and making money and charging people, how like everything we talk about on this podcast, they're just your own beliefs. I remember I had a situation where I was going to work with this girl that I met on Instagram about kind of coaching to help her with her passions, right? And I remember I felt really bad at this point to even tell her I was charging. I didn't know how to be like, oh, by the way, how much can you pay? And I remember telling her, hey, by the way, like, you know, I'm charging for this. And I was like, but she told me she like didn't have a lot of money. So I was like, you know what? I can still help you out. I'm more than happy to help you out because I'm passionate, right? Like I don't need to get paid, but financial reasons, I do need to get paid. And then I remember her being like, you know what? Don't worry about it. Like, I really value the fact to be able to pay you for your craft. I'm going to check back in with you when I'm at my new job so I can pay you. And I remember this moment being like, wow, people want to pay you. And when I think about when I've seen coaches or I've go get a massage or when I go to therapy, I don't ever question the fact I have to pay them. Like when we can kind of build this respect to understand that people who are asking to get paid don't have a bad intention always. And I wonder where that comes from. I think for me, that came from seeing all the greed in the corporate world and all the way people threw out money without giving a shit and kind of like having so much ego tied into it. So I think money, the way we view it in our minds, there's a lot of stuff there. Like there's a lot of scarcity, there's a lot of fear, and money. Like when you think about like Daisy, and I'm curious if you would be willing to share your experience, like when you kind of had that freak out, realizing you're living paycheck to paycheck a few months ago, and kind of like how you were realizing that how money has had so much control over you because of the association that you and I and like so much of the world gives it, that all of a sudden, like I checked my bank account sometime earlier in December and I remember I got so anxious it's almost like we assume the worst. We assume so many bad things. And I think when we can rewrite that relationship with it and we can recognize that a lot of the limiting beliefs we have about our ability to charge people, just like the insecurities you have about what other people think about you, this is the same thing. Like your experience in your mind does not reflect what other people think. People could be like, oh, this person has a coaching business. Of course I'm going to pay him. Because again, reciprocity. I'm receiving something and I'm offering something, right? It's the balance. It's the flow of life happening in together. So yeah, I think that's also fascinating that he has a coaching business for chess. Just goes to show, pick a niche.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I had this realization where I'd gone through most of my savings, and I mean, I have a nanny job so I can cover my expenses, but it's still terrifying to know that like you're hardly getting by with your current situation. But I had like kind of this meltdown realization with it, and it didn't really add up to why I was feeling so extreme. And I think reflecting on it, I think it was kind of like the death to my previous relationship to money. And I'm not even sure what that means yet, but I think that means that I wasn't confident in myself to find ways to make money. So I had to rely and put myself into a specific structure to make sure that I received money in one specific way. And I wasn't going to think outside of that. I wasn't going to go and try to find side hustles. I wasn't going to go and try to find ways to make money otherwise. Like, I think it was an over reliance on comfortability of just knowing this money's coming in. And that's how I'm going to live my life, knowing that there's just money coming in from this paycheck, from this corporate job that I'm working, and I'm super comfortable. So I'm going to let that just hold me. So I think the realization I had when I saw that most of my savings was out and that the current situation of not being at a corporate job and et cetera, making money a little bit here, making money a little bit there, it really made me take accountability for myself in my life and how I want to make money. And that might sound funny because you might look at someone who has a corporate job or a well-paying job where they can take care of themselves, or any kind of job where they can take care of themselves. And you may look at me and say, that's what you're doing now with your nanny job. But I think for me, it was not an external experience. It was fully an internal experience in realizing that I'm taking accountability for myself, realizing that I have to carve my own path. And I guess that's what I'm doing. And I guess I don't know that that really might make sense to the person who's listening, right?
Well, I think what you're kind of saying is that, like, again, it's the inner world. It's our inner world of, for me, I have a ton of money saved from my job, but I still have anxiety attacks. Not
Right.
anxiety attacks, but like so much fear that really just reveals that, like, this huge fear bubble that so many of us have. And so much of this fear that I'm realizing is not substantiated. It doesn't even make sense. And Daisy and I, we were having this conversation a few days ago where we were like, it's almost like we decide that we're going to give up before we try.
Yeah, so it has nothing to do with money. None of this had anything to do with money because after I had that experience, in a way I felt free, which doesn't make much sense at all. But I felt free because I feel like I'd left in the past the limiting beliefs I had about myself. It was almost like there was a sense of reality of, okay, you made this decision to do this, Daisy. You made this decision when you had $20,000 saved. You made the decision. Where'd you think it was going to lead to? You know, where'd you think you were going to go with this? And it was just the second phase of that decision past me made, of it hitting me in the face and being like, right, you made the decision to leave your job, to live off savings for a period of time, and then get a job where you're still tapping into that savings. You thought that you were going to keep that savings there forever. And I think seeing that drain out, seeing that run out, it was like, okay, it's time for you to step up. It's time for you to think, how the hell are you actually going to start making a substantial amount of money to support yourself? And I needed that phase too. But it put me into a realization state that I have to trust myself and I have to be confident in myself, because there's a real thing out here that's pushing you. That's saying if you do nothing, you know, you're not going to like the outcome of that. And it was like a nice reminder to say, right, you've been preparing for this moment for the last year and you didn't even realize it, but you're ready for it. You're ready to be out on your own. You have the skill set, you have the following, you have the experience. Put yourself out there and just start doing it. And that's why it was freeing, because I realized then that I am capable. And I've always had this very limited mindset with money. I felt like I always had a hard time getting raises. I felt like I always had a hard time getting a higher salary, all because I felt like I wasn't deserving of it, because I didn't know how I was adding to the company through the job that I was doing. I was never confident. And I think this is very common with people. And maybe you could get the same experience that I'm having now by really advocating for yourself with getting a raise, really understanding. But I think it all came down to, I just never believed in myself. And there's so many routes to getting to believe in yourself, but this has just been mine with money.
That's literally exactly it. Like, it's like we look at money and we think it's the money, right? And that's why we all have so much anxiety that comes over us with money. And we're like, oh my God, like, how am I going to buy this? What am I going to do? How am I going to make money? That fear. I am sure everyone who's listening to this has had a time where they've had fear with money, or you're extremely, extremely comfortable that you don't. And I was at that place once where I was spending money, freaking buying everything. I was making this great salary. And it's like, even if you're in that position, the key here is recognizing that what's really going on is it's not the money. It's not the money. Just like it's not the job, just like it's not your partner. It's never anything external. There's something going on in here in your inner world that's not letting you feel confident in yourself. And it's almost like our relationship to money reflects the beliefs we have about ourselves. And we look at money, we go, I'm so anxious about that because I'm running out of savings. I'm so anxious because I'm not able to make money. But what we're really saying there is, I don't trust myself. I don't believe in myself. I have so much scarcity. I have so much fear about my ability to make money. And it's so interesting. I thought it was so interesting. Someone said this to me recently I was like, oh yeah, like this was a few months ago before I started making money. And I was like, yeah, I don't know how I'm going to make money on my own. Like, I've never done it. And someone was like, I don't remember who, they're like, you already made so much money as a lawyer. You already, and I was like, yeah, I was working for a job. And it's like, it was that, right? Like, just because I was working for an employer, I was still the one who got hired. I was still the one doing the work. I was still the one who went to law school. I did all that. But that just showed how disconnected I was from all of that, because I couldn't even look to myself and say, right, I made it to here. Of course I can now figure it out. I didn't feel that way. I was scared. I was terrified. I was anxious. I was insecure. So it's almost like we can create this life where either we're making good money from our jobs or we're not. It almost doesn't even matter. But what matters is that the common denominator is you. How well do you know yourself? How well have you really, really asked yourself about the things that you want and the things that you think you can do? And it's like we form these limiting beliefs before we even try. And that's why Sophie, me at the job 2 years ago, was like, how else will I ever do anything else? I already went to law school. Like, how else will I do anything else? Our mind assumes, like, we look to the future. It's almost like, okay, think of a time where you were looking far out into some field or the city, and you realize that, like, our eyeball could only see past a certain point. I forgot exactly how many feet it is, but like, I can't look from New York and see Texas. Like, there's a cutoff that our eyes can receive. So when I'm looking out in the sky right now, and it's like, oh, I could only see my backyard. So we think only your backyard exists. But we forget that all the other states within America, not even within America, all the other countries out there, everything else out there, that maybe our minds aren't able to perceive because of our limiting beliefs. And just like everything in life, if you haven't read a book yet, if you haven't learned, if you haven't expanded your mind, how are you going to know what else is out there? If you haven't read and informed yourself or traveled or whatever it is. So it's just so important to recognize that the ideas and the stories and the belief system you have about yourself does not reflect what you're capable of and what can be achieved. And let me tell you, we think it's going to be a lot scarier than it actually is. Like, I'm living the thing I thought was terrifying. And the only hard part about it is that it's made me face myself, it's made me face my emotions, and it's made me heal. Otherwise, I'm just here doing the same thing I did in my old job, but now I'm just doing it in a different forum, different vehicle.
So it's interesting because it's almost like that fear, a little bit of it is based in reality, like the future reality. The decisions you made to get to this point where you left your job, there's consequences that will come. And I think knowing that that's not right now, but knowing that that will come, there will come a time where your savings is gone, or there won't be, because the point is that I'm getting at, for the sake of this example, the point is that that point will come. But with that being said, that's enough motivation and enough level of discomfort to say, oh, right, there's a little bit of fire here. I can't just like sit here and chill and do nothing. I got to supplement this. I got to find this time isn't just for me to do nothing. This time is for me to have enough time to realize, okay, I have this right now. My bases are covered right now, but I got to find a way to make sure I can support myself out of doing something that I love. So it's an interesting method to working. For me, it's new because when it comes to jobs in the past, it was an entirely different relationship for me, right? This could not be the case for someone else. This could not be the case for your experience. But I think looking at our experience, I'm reflecting what we were talking about earlier. So if I had a flashback to before we moved to Austin, I realized we were having a conversation similar to this, of how we can be so comfortable knowing that there's so much money in our savings, there's so much money here, but there's a level of it's not there anymore. You know it's not going to be there anymore. And that's phase 2 of the decision you made that's going to come on later. And it's interesting how we put ourselves into uncertainty, not knowing, but it comes to a point where you have to take accountability for yourself. And that's why it's freeing, because that's allowing yourself the opportunity to do something that you wouldn't otherwise done if you didn't put yourself in this position. And it was all a self-made decision. But when you made the decision, you couldn't see you'd be where you're at now. But when you made the decision, you said, I trust myself to figure it out. And here you are in that position. And here you are figuring it out.
Exactly. Like, we cap ourselves. We set a bar, we set a limit, and we say, okay, my life's just going to be like this because of my Uncle Joe told me once that everybody has to suffer, or some bullshit. And it's just so fascinating. This is why I understand that the other day I was like, oh, it's not that hard to get featured in New York Times. It's not that hard to become a top podcaster. I don't see, I remove the hierarchy. Everybody else who has done it is just another human being. And I know plenty of people who have come from so many different backgrounds, from different countries. Like, my dad literally immigrated here from another country and came on the plane with like $100 and built his life. Like, it's possible. And just like you're saying, Daisy, it's like we prevent ourselves from ever finding out what we're capable of because we don't let ourselves try. So of course, if you're standing there and you're saying, oh, like, what's going to happen? How am I going to leave? If we're standing there, so of course, if flashback to us, say we were in New York City at our jobs and we're like, well, we have a salary. How are we going to figure it out? I can't right here. I can't understand. Like, I have this money. It's going to run out. How am I going to make money on my own? All I know is I'm interested in, talking about this kind of stuff. Like, how is it gonna? And that's the thing. You don't have to know how. You don't have to know how. Get rid of the how. All you have to know is that you're going to show up and the layers unfold. Your life unfolds. All of a sudden, Daisy's like, oh, I'm going to start doing podcast editing services. Right?
If you would have told me that a year ago, I'd been like, I can't offer that. I'm not skilled. Who's going to trust me to do that? And it's like, that's what I would have thought. So I would have never thought that I could get to the place where I'm confident offering that, where I have all of our episodes to show my capabilities, and I'm a very open person with it. So it's interesting because you never know how you're going to change. You're never going to know how your confidence or your competencies will change. That's why it's so hard to plan for things. That's why you have to trust that as long as you're doing the work on yourself, that you're going to evolve and change and see new opportunities arise. And I think also going back to the kind of the beginning of the conversation, but with this podcast in the past year, it's that level of consistency. It's just stay consistent. Just stay consistent with whatever it is that you're trying. Even if that's trying a bunch of new things, just keep trying new things. Just keep trying new things and see what sits with you, because you're going to learn about yourself in that process. You're going to be empowered through your own learnings, through your own evolution. You're going to be empowered through that. And you're going to realize that change is possible, because it's not about money. And yes, we live in a society where we have to have money to live, but we don't have to lead with that. We can lead with following our heart and doing things on the side that light us up, that will help us learn about ourselves, that ultimately will give us a growth mindset, which ultimately will lead us to seeing that things can change. So what that's going to do? That's going to change your relationship with money as well.
And that'll change your relationship with your whole life. Like, when did we start thinking that our lives are fixed? Was that because we went to college and were taught that you get this one job and you move up? Like, when did we start thinking that you can't evolve and you can't change? And that it reminds me, I used to have this mindset of like, I'm only going to go out to this dinner if I know I'm going to benefit from it. I'm only going to do this thing if I know I'm going to benefit from it. So calculated, trying to control everything. And it's just like, I was getting in the way of just jumping in each day to the pool and just swimming. Just keep jumping in. And before you know it, I was swimming. I was swimming into the ocean. I was hitting big waves. I was doing all the things that I never thought I can do. And that's because we have the ability to learn new things. We learned how to make a podcast. Daisy learned how to edit. I learned how to edit on Premiere Pro. I have learned so much. I didn't even realize. And the thing is, you don't even realize you're learning because you're doing it until you wake up one day and go, oh, holy shit, I know all this stuff all of a sudden. I can teach people this.
And I think like the last thing I'll say on this is, I think my relationship to money has changed a lot, and it's changing every day, is because I used to lead in my life with fear. And when you're leading in your life with fear, it's going to be too overwhelming to learn a new program. It's going to be too overwhelming to figure out how to produce a podcast properly so that you get all the right edits and you get all the right noise reduction and you get all that done. That's going to be so overwhelming. But once you realize, and once you stop living in constant fear of failure, for my example, a lot more time opens up, and the drive is no longer fear. The drive is simply the pleasure of whatever it is you're doing in the moment and seeing any level of growth. And that's what's exciting to you. And that's been a huge change in mentality for me. It's made me a lot more excited to start something new. I used to get extreme anxiety about starting something new, thinking I'm going to fail. I can't do this. And now I don't have that anymore the way that I used to have it. And the changes within ourselves are always going to be the way we change our relationship with everyone around us, as well as money.
Because the relationship to yourself is your relationship to your life. The relationship to yourself is your reality. Your experience in life is you. It's always just you. So now I get it, how there's these people out there who are writers, musicians. They do all these things because for me, I let go of the anxiety. I let myself learn to write again. I let myself learn. And now I'm here. I've learned. So I think a good place to close out this episode is just goes to show I was like, oh, Daisy, I don't know what the podcast is about today. I'm just kind of tired. And here we are. You never know what's going to unfold. So keep taking the steps forward. Take the baby steps. Even if you feel like, oh, it's just a baby step. That step is what it then will become the next step, which will keep getting you further and further and further. I'm kind of having like a mind blown moment right now of like, oh, and I would think, oh, I have this savings and it's going to run out and I'm going to be in the same place in a year from now I am now. What? Of course not. I'm growing and changing every single day. And we all have the capacity to do that. All of us.
Each day is a new day. And each day can be a different day than yesterday was. And it's an exciting thing. And I hope that if you listen to this podcast, I hope that you enjoyed it. But I also hope that you just take away that you are not fixed, and change is something that takes time. And if you're doing the hard work, I see you. It takes time for you to see it, to be honest. But when you do see it, you're going to have a holy shit moment. And that's an exciting place to be. So thank you all for listening. I hope the new year is treating you well. And I'm very excited to share this new year with all of you.
I'm pumped. I'm excited. If you told me a year ago I'd be here, I wouldn't believe you. So if that is motivation or inspiration to anyone who's ever listening, please remember we're all the same. We're all connected. Thank you for joining us. As always, we will be back on Thursday for a new episode. And if you like this podcast, rate, review, subscribe, send it to your friends. We appreciate all the support that you can offer us expand Life Unpotted and connect with more and more people. Thanks for joining, and we'll talk to you all soon.